Hello and welcome to this edition of TORC Talk featuring Nic Maszk. Nic is only in his second year as an obstacle course race athlete and has already had some pretty awesome results, including a win in the OCR Stars Mile and a top 10 finish in that same event. Nic, in just his 1 year, has figured out how to take himself from placing in the 20s and 30s at the elite level to landing himself on the podium in just about 5 months. So we talk about how he's really helped himself improve not just his fitness for obstacle course racing, but his race IQ and how that's really helped take him to the next level. And we also talk about the things he needs to do to keep improving on that, things that you can do in your own training practices that can help you take your results to the next level. We also talk about how Nic is a soon-to-be father and how he plans on balancing high-level training and raising a family, which is very relatable content, and it's going to be awesome to follow Nic through this journey, and we'll make sure to bring him back for many other TORC talks to see how things have progressed in the months to come. So I love this conversation. Nic's super positive, great energy, very humble, like real humble, and has a really interesting perspective on a lot of different things. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you'll enjoy it too. Here is Nic Maszk. Cool, dude. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. And I just want to kind of do a deep dive about who you are as an athlete, some of the goals you got going on for obstacle course racing, some of the stuff you've done in the past. So why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of where you are right now. So tell us a little bit about where you live and train.
Sure. So I live in La Grande, Oregon. It's northeast Oregon. Terrain-wise, I shouldn't say terrain, elevation-wise, we're high up enough that we just get bombarded in the winter. So right now, training is cold and really wet. It's been kind of weird. It's been hotter. So it's actually just doing a whole lot of raining, which usually doesn't happen. We usually have feet of snow by now. So the running side of things is better than it could be. But I expect January, February is going to be really, really snowy and cold.
And so we were talking a week or two ago, and I didn't realize you get actually buried in snow. I thought you got some snow and it would come and go, but you just can't even get on the trails.
Yeah, we get it's bad. We've had years where the snow drifts on the side of the road are over 10 feet high.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. Whenever you hear on the news, oh, what's happening in Buffalo, New York, and it looks terrible. It's a mirror image over here.
Are you serious?
Because we live in the mountains. We get a ton of snow.
Because they say it's lake effect, right? In Syracuse or Buffalo, because they're right off a lake and things come the moisture comes down.
I don't know what it is with the precipitation here, but because we live in a valley, so I'm in a bowl in a mountain range, so the heat kind of just comes right over the top, and then all the hot air gets sucked out. And so they drain where I live. They drained a swamp. It used to be all swampland, and they drained all the water out. And so we just live in this little empty basin where the water used to be.
Oh, to build houses.
To build houses. So it's, I don't know. Just winter hits and it gets super duper cold and lots of snow, hard winters.
Do you like the snow?
I like to play in it. I don't like to train in it.
Yeah. Are there outdoorsy things to do? Can you ski and snowboard and cross country ski?
Yeah, I live 45 minutes away from a ski resort. If you drive fast. And it gets up to 8,000 feet, I think. So that's Anthony Lakes. Yeah. So it gets really high, really quick. I work right next to there. But as for outdoor recreation, I kind of stick to sledding. I've gone snowboarding twice, broke my arm. And I've gone skiing twice, and I broke my whole body. So
that's always been my hang up, because it's in the wintertime. Well, I played basketball and all the way growing up through high school and middle school and such. So I wasn't going to do ski club or whatever. And then getting into running, it's running all year. And if you get hurt, if I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to get hurt pounding miles. Okay. I'm not getting hurt falling down. So that's the whole thing. I just never was able to get dragged out there. I went snowboarding one time.
Yeah.
Didn't break my wrist, but it wasn't fun. It certainly wasn't fun.
It looks so fun, but the amount of time and money you spend to get good at it. That year I broke my arm was my freshman year of high school. And I had actually been medically written to not do activity for a year and a half. So I hadn't done any PE. I hadn't done sports in a whole year, and I was just like really itching to do something. And then I broke my arm right before track started. And the doctor was like, yeah, you can't go out and run. You can't do any of this. And I was like so anxious to go do it that I just lied to my coach. So when I got to school, I take the sling off, because when you break your humerus, they don't give you a cast. So I just take my sling off and I'd lie to my coach, just be like, yeah, super pumped for the season. And then when I go back home, I'd put it back on. So nobody at school even knew I broke my arm.
You just went to school with a broken arm and just hope people didn't touch it?
Yep.
Or what?
And I had one time, I had a guy like pat me really hard on the arm, and it was like devastating. But I lied to my coach. I lied to like everybody, because I just really wanted to start track season. And my first race, it was still broken. I ran a 1500.
How'd it go? What'd you run? Do you remember?
I PR'd, but that's not saying much because it came from like middle school times. I think I ran like 4:54 or something.
That's pretty strong for what, 8th and 9th grade?
That was 9th grade, but
9th grade. That's a good freshman time.
My first 8th grade 15 was a sub 5, so it wasn't like a big deal.
15. That's right. We're talking about 15. Okay, right.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking miles. I was like, it's pretty freaking fast as a freshman with a broken arm.
Yeah.
15 hurt. Makes more sense. Yeah, I bet. So yeah, you mentioned real quick in passing that you were medically told not to do anything active, and you had some sort of underlying condition, right? That still kind of sticks with you today. And what was that? Like, why were you told not to do stuff?
Yeah. So that was, that like years and years of like trying to figure out what was going on. Basically in 8th grade, like in the middle of track season, so this is like spring of my 8th grade year, I started having like really bad fainting spells. And so I'd pass out like on average for like 7-8 times a day. Just walk down the hall, hit the ground, forget it happened, get back up, hit the ground again. So after a while, like my mom and I were really concerned. And so she was like, we should probably take you to the doctor for this. And so they checked me out. They were like, nothing crazy. He's got low blood pressure. He's got a low pulse, but we can't really figure out what's going on there. And then I had the one race I did, that 1500, I like collapsed at the end of it, and it just like wasn't normal stuff happening. And then we, thought nothing of it. We're just like, well, it's weird, but he'll grow out of it. And then during school one day, I just had like this really, really bad bleeding. So I'd never had a nosebleed up to this point. And I just had like a waterfall coming out my nose, coming out my mouth. I like destroyed the bathroom. I feel really bad for the janitor who had to clean up the mess I left. But I was just like pouring blood out of everything. And so went back to the hospital, and they were like, something's wrong. We need to look into it more. And so they took me out to Boise, and I got an EKG, an echocardiogram, and they looked at my heart, and they were like, your pulse is 28. Like, that's extremely low for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And so they started looking into like why. And so they found that in my aortic valve, which is like I think the main artery that comes out of the heart when blood leaves.
Right, it's like the big one at the top.
Yep, big one at the top. I had this like abscess. So I have this like growth. It's not like a tumor or anything. It's like a cyst.
Okay.
And it's inside the aorta. And so what it did is, the doctors tried to describe it to me like when you put your thumb over a garden hose, it was doing that to the outflow of my heart. And so every time I did like any kind of activity or my heart was starting to beat quick, I just have this immense amount of pressure leaving my heart.
Because it was getting backed up and it was trying hard to get that blood to your extremities, right? So it would just like crank up the pressure essentially and just...
Yeah, so the out pressure was extremely high, but the return was like really low. And so it was just messing with my everything.
And is that why it would be like the slow pulse? Because it would be like it would hammer real hard to get the blood out, but would it take a long time to get the blood to like draw the blood back in?
That's the part I've been trying to figure out. Like, I think part of my pulse is just genetic and exercise. Like, my grandfather had a pulse of 40 his whole life.
Beast.
And like a lot of people in my family, just super low heart rate. So I think part of it's just genetic and it's unrelated. But I imagine it has something to do with it. I never had to do surgery. I never had to deep dive on it. We just ended up monitoring it for 4 years. over in Boise, just looking at my heart, taking pictures. And finally they said that like I kind of grew to an extent and the growth kind of shrunk. And so now I don't pass out anymore. But
So you actually did outgrow it. They're like,
yeah,
it'll pass,
now
you'll
I'm
outgrow
good.
it. And now, and that's what
Yeah,
happened.
so yeah, the pulse is still the same. The blood pressure is the same, but I just don't pass out anymore. So
That's good.
yeah.
So yeah, because sometimes like my heart rate's pretty low as well. I had a thing in high school. I never had passing out or anything, and nothing that was ever. They never found anything or nothing that came back according to like my heart rate that was abnormal, but it was low. Like I went to a physical one time. It was like in the mid to low 30s. They sent me to the hospital to do like the tests and all the thing, wear around some gear for a full day. And they're like, oh, you're just like active and fit and this and that. But like at that point I had only been running for maybe like 2 years. So like, I think there's definitely something that like a genetic piece to this. Cause I have the same thing, like on my Strava, people are always like, oh my God, your heart rate's like 110 running like, like 7-minute miles or whatever. That's like easy. And, but I'm kind of with you. I think it is a lot of genetics to a certain extent.
I have a really, one of my old teammates, he's a pro runner now. And like, I'll look at our data and like, we'll both run an easy run, like 650, 7-minute pace. And our heart rate's around like 115, 120. But I think that piece is he's just that fit. And my heart's just like I was born that way, because when it comes down to like he's a sub-4 miler, I'm not, so.
Right. But you are also fit. Do you think that the low heart rate has, or just, it hasn't seemed to have hurt in your running performance? Do you think it has hurt? Do you think if you didn't have that abscess or that cyst or whatever you had there messing with the blood pressure, that you would be a better runner or worse runner?
Definitely not better. Like there's no way it isn't helping. Like having a lower heart rate and still being able to like, because in 8th grade I could still get up to like 217, 220. Just having that range I think is 100% an advantage. There's no way it's not.
Oh, so your max gets really high.
It used to. I had a huge like I don't know what you'd call it. Like I hardly ever get above 200 anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Huh. So
ranking.
But you'd imagine like the harder it is to get blood to your muscles, that can't be like that helpful, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like looking at it like RPM on a car. Like even though you don't want to go there, the option's nice, So yeah, even though I don't want to be at 210 in my BPM, it'd be nice if I could go there in a race. But then the other side of that, looking at it is, do I need to? Like if 180 gets me to VO2, do I need to go to 200? So yeah.
Do you follow your heart rate in terms of training? Cause your baseline's screwed up. So you couldn't go off of typical, Joel Friel, like, heart rate training Bible stuff. Cause it would just, your zones would be all wacky. They would have to be very specific to you and take a lot of testing and can take a lot of type of anecdotal stuff to know exactly where you are. Do you put much weight behind it? Do you look at it when you train?
So I used to never, like my training background when I first started running and like all through high school was like your textbook kind of like ignorant runner of the harder I work, the better I get. And that's it. And then I got my degree in biology and I started looking at like the science behind running after I got out of college and like near the end of it. And I was like, oh, maybe I really should be looking into this like data stuff and like the science behind running. So I kind of have a duality when I look at training, and I don't really put too much weight into anything. Like heart rate data is nice, but I think it's better to just like look at big picture. I don't think I should like put 100% of my focus into it. And same thing with like effort. Like, yeah, I like effort-based training, but if you only base your runs on how you feel, you're not going to do well like your end goal. So
sometimes you got to press into things, right? You got to figure out where that is. And if you're like, this feels about like a 9 out of 10, but like you could be leaving, 10, 15 seconds like per mile out there or whatever. Just
running's so hard. That's the hardest part with training is like how much is it technical and how much does it feel? And, like balancing that every day. And then you could drive yourself crazy with like spreadsheets, looking at your own data.
I know. Even like things like the power meter. Have you come across one of those, like a Stride thing, the Stride power meter pods or anything? Have you ever tried those out?
I haven't tried them, no.
Me neither. I think I would, if someone came to me as an athlete and wanted me to coach them using the stride power meter, I think I would try to steer them away from it. It's just too like much nuts and bolts, right? Like, oh, if I can get my power to here, I think it'd be a nice
Hmm.
tool, but then it kind of gets back to like what you're saying. Like it can't be all one thing. And that to me ends up being more like kind of like a cyclist or a triathlete who
It
has a
is.
power meter,
And
you know?
you take the human out of it. Like, I don't know. To me,
Mm-hmm.
some sports you need to be more, data focused. Like cycling is kind of like that. The bike is so much more important than the person in the beginning. And then you train the person, but like they're working together that way. With running, it's like, it's you. And so if you look too much into like, oh, my heart rate needs to be this, my stride needs to be this, the cadence needs to be this, you forget the whole reason you're doing it, and that's just to like compete. At least that's
Yeah.
what most runners do, is you go out there to race people. It's not like focusing on the distance between your toe and heel.
Right. Or yeah, a lot of times the athletes who I talk to, they're like, "Oh, well, I want to get the most out of what I can do. I want to find my true potential." Right. And
Hmm.
maybe you can help yourself find that true potential by the use of data and turning those knobs a little bit more. But really, like, what is that telling you? Like, you want to push yourself to the limit, and that's ultimately going to have to be something you're going to have to like assert your own will on, rather than
For
just like
sure.
getting your metrics to like this
Yeah.
certain piece. And yeah, like cycling, it's like a tool, right? Like they all kind of work the same. Every human kind of works differently. I wonder if there's
Hmm.
going to be something where it can kind of take all of those things, take like your stride length, your power, your heart rate, and like how well you work off of carbohydrates versus fats, and like where that threshold is, and just be able to tell you all the different pieces. Because right now the stride pod, it just seems like everyone's stride's so different.
Yeah, people are too different. I think that's what it comes down to. It's like trying to do that with running would be like trying to compare like chess to wrestling. Like, both these pieces have moves. If they do this, you should respond with this move, but that's not how wrestling works. Like that's not, it's not this just like back and forth alternating turn. It's very dynamic. It's, so much more than just knowing these and learning these moves and executing them. So with running, I don't think it's like, oh, if I get my power here and I get my heart rate here, I'm going to PR and run this in whatever race I'm doing.
Right. And I think that's like what the cyclists do. It's like, if I could just get it here, this will be the result. But there
Hmm.
is always going to be that element in running that is just going to be, I feel like, so much more of a mental part of like leaning into how it's feeling, or just really accepting where to push, where I think
Hmm.
where like the power meter or your metrics are going to be off. And even the heart rate, like when I use heart rate, I don't think it's that accurate, to be honest. And then the only way I kind of do it is to keep myself honest. Like if I'm feeling not great and my heart rate says like, oh, it's pretty low, it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm just kind of being a wuss right now. Like, let's
Hmm.
stop doing that.
Yeah, and even that can be dangerous because then if you're right and your watch is wrong, then now you're overtraining. So
Right. Right. And I found that'd be helpful, at least for OCR, at least, where it's like, am I tired because this bucket is heavy, or because like I'm actually exerting myself too much? Like and that's,
mhm,
I think it's a little helpful there. But I've
for
broken
sure.
my Garmin watch a couple of times, which isn't great. So anyway, so through middle school, like it was like, all right, I'm running. Went into freshman year, you were into running so much that you ran with a broken arm and you were
Mhm.
willing to just do that.
Yeah.
Did you like, yeah, duh. Did you come up as a runner? Like, so you were running in like middle school and coming up through, or have you always been a runner? Has it been your background, or did you play like any other sports as a kid?
So yeah, no, I was terrible. Like you name the sport, I did it and I was bad at it. I did baseball for a few years and I was super freaking bad. The kids on my team would call me McDonald's just because my glove was so small. It looked like a McDonald's toy. And I just had really tiny hands, so I wasn't good at sports. I got cut from my sixth grade basketball team. Didn't even make the team, sixth grade. I'm pretty sure you just have to be a kid and you make the team. So I don't know what I did wrong there. I played soccer. I was terrible. I played football for 2 years. Just really bad receiver. I think I had one ball overthrown like 20 yards over my head, and that was my one play. So I was just really bad at sports. So I was like, okay, running, I can do running. And so I don't know if I'd say I was always a runner. I liked to race kids on the playground. I was like, hey, you want to race? And at that time I thought I was a sprinter, and I thought I was like, oh, I'm so good at the, the 200, the 400. Really, I was just the only kid into it. There was like, handfuls of kids that were just way faster and didn't care.
Yeah.
And then I found out, I think the moment I found out that I could actually be decent at running was in middle school. Like 7th grade is the first grade they let people race in my town. It's pretty small, so they don't have 6th grade track. They do now, but they didn't when I was a kid. And in 7th grade, I ran the 800, and like no one wants to do it because it sucks.
It's like, and that's and when you first start running, it's pretty long.
It's
even like a 400 as like a kid. Like I remember in 5th grade, I ran a 400 at this like track meet we had at school, and it felt so long.
It is long.
So, yeah, it is still long. But 800,
it's the longest sprint in track and field.
it's a disaster. But the 800 is a very hard event, and so you went into it. You were like, all right, I'm doing this.
Well, at the time, I was like, wow, I'm really good at this. And then later, I found it's like, wow, I'm the only kid who wanted to actually put in effort for that long, because when you're in 7th grade, it's like a 2.5 minute race.
Yeah.
So that's a long time to be working hard as a little kid. And so I started seeing success in like the 800 and the 15. I started running the mile, in school, and I would just, I'd lap kids in the mile. And so I felt really good about it. I was like, oh, I could probably be successful in this. And so all my attention at that point kind of like focused in on running, because it was like the first time I had found success in a sport after failing in like 7 or 8 of them. I wrestled too. And I'm pretty sure my 7th grade year, I didn't win a match. Yep. And we did like a lot, like 25 or so.
Not always pinned, sometimes pinned.
The worst wrestling match I ever had, I wasn't pinned. I was teched by a kid who he was 20 pounds lighter than me. He was like gunning to be a state champion. I think he ended up winning state. And so he moved up in his weight class to, actually have a challenge, but, joke's on him because I was really bad. And the beginning of the match, he just picks me up and drops me on my back, gets his 2 points for the takedown, and then lets
you get up. Oh no.
And so that's a 1 point differential. To tech me, he needs 10 points. So he slammed me on the mat 10 times in a row. Yep.
Yeah, he's just getting practice. And it was 10, because I think in high school, at least over here, it's 15. So
yeah, it's 10 in Oregon, at least for middle school.
For middle school, probably. And, kids getting beat up that bad, you don't need to prolong it any further.
Yeah, I did better in 8th grade, but that I remember that match. It's pretty bad.
But in running, you found success at it. And what was it that you thought? Did you have any thoughts behind why you were good at it? Or were you just like, oh, cool, I'm fast, or cool, like I have good endurance?
I think it was a combination of like we're going back to genetics. Like I definitely was like predisposed to just having an easier time than other kids, because I wasn't tired running around the track. That wasn't hard. And I didn't have to work hard to do it. Like middle school, looking back, like I thought I was like, really tough. I just wasn't really working that hard, and it was easier for me.
Yeah.
I found out in high school that I couldn't like coast on that anymore. And really like, the problem for me is I come from a pretty small town. Like, even though we were 4A Oregon, my town's like got 10,000 people in it, 13,000 people. So you can be really good here, and then you go to the state meet and you just get crushed.
Mm-hmm.
So my regular season meets, I'd win like 9 races in a row. And then I'd show up where there were real runners, like really good, from like Portland area or Boise or these bigger towns, and I just get smashed. So I felt like a really good runner in high school, which was good because it kind of like furthered my development, which is really good. You need to have successes, even if you're not the best. But getting into college, it was a huge wake-up call. I was like, wow, like the kids who were winning state against me are not even contenders right now at a national meet. So
true. But in terms of the high school, yeah, like coming from, I share a similar experience. Like the area I grew up in together was relatively big, but not in terms of like the other districts in the state. So it was, definitely like big fish, small pond to get to the bigger level. And it's like, okay, like this is legit. Like where their regional meets, they'd be running crazy times. And then when we have to get there, it'd be like the only meet where we went against like real competition. But you still did well in terms of statewide, right?
Yeah. After I'd say my freshman year, I got crushed. It was bad. And in fact, in the state meet, a bird pooped on me. Yep. Like hit me on the last lap.
I've heard that is supposed to be good luck, but I don't, it seems like really bad luck to me. I don't see how that could be construed as good luck in any way.
I don't think it was good luck.
Not
it
that
was
day.
Like just the stamp on the day. Like, hey, how can we make this worse? And that precision, you know.
But last in a state meet as a freshman, though.
Yeah, as a freshman. So I wasn't even supposed to go.
You went. Going to the state meet and as a freshman, even just qualifying through it is still like really good.
Oh yeah. Looking back, I'm really happy I did it just because the experience of going there, and especially because in Oregon you go to Hayward Field, which is like a big deal for high schoolers, you know. It's like a world-class facility now, and even then it was like going to the Roman Coliseum. It was so cool. And so even getting to go there as a freshman like really sparked my will to get better my sophomore year. And so that was always like the icing on the cake, like, hey, if you go to state, you go to Hayward. And yeah, so I would always think about that in my training. Like, I really want to go back to Eugene. Eugene's so cool. There's such a cool running culture there. At the time I was like, I really want to go to college there. And then later, like, I realized I don't want to go to college there, but yeah, I mean, that was a huge incentive. I think it just rolls back into that whole time I was in high school, having those like little successes, even if they weren't a big deal to the, an outside perspective, they were really fundamental in like developing me as a runner.
So sometimes I think about this in terms of my own development and how some people are driven. And I feel when I do well, I am motivated to continue to do well, where others are motivated off of their failure, or like they see where they need to go and where they are currently and they strive to get there. And did you think about that in any way, or was it more just like the experience of moving, like getting to go against the best competition, or like what kept you driven? Because it sounds like you were doing well, like through in like your area, like almost right away, right?
Yeah, right off the bat. I was the fastest kid on our team day one as a freshman. So It wasn't like I had any internal problems. It was just like, oh, well, I'm faster than everybody on this team. So unfortunately that never changed in high school, which, it was harder for training, but like, yeah, motivation wise, it's tough. Like, I think my motivations have like, I keep saying developed, but they've really like changed as I've grown up. So when I was a little kid, like my motivation was just like, I want to win because like gold medal, blue ribbon, I just want to be the best.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I had these incentives of like, oh, like positive reinforcement. If you go to state, you're a cool kid, you're a varsity athlete, you're successful. And like, you get to travel places, because where I went to high school, like I didn't travel, I didn't go on vacation. So the only way I was going to leave my hometown was if I made it to these big meets. So that was like so fun to see, coming from a really like rural community, going to like Portland and going to Eugene. It was just so fun. So those were my motivators. And then as I got older, I'd say like 17 years old, that didn't do it for me anymore because I'd done it, right? Like I'd been to these meets, I'd experienced more, and it started to like turn to this, I want to win because I don't want to lose. And the motivation to just like be better than people for the sake of competition. Like if you're going to be pouring hours of work every day into a sport, why would you let someone who isn't doing that beat you? And that was a huge, like, log in my fire for a long time. Like that stoked my flames for years. Just like, I don't want to lose to people who don't care about this sport as much as I do.
So you felt like you cared more. So you're like, it's like, how could anyone care as much as I do? And like, how could they possibly, and if that's the case, like they can't beat me. Like that's not how it's going to work. And how did that serve you? Did you think that was good or bad or what?
It was good for a while. Like you can only get so far with that like mentality of like, like this sport's for me. And like, I deserve to win because I worked harder. Like it's a very narrow mind of thinking, but at the time it worked for me. My senior year, it didn't, because basically I didn't train enough to back up that mentality. Like if you're going to have the mentality of like, I want to be the best in this sport and nobody's going to beat me because I work harder, you have to work harder.
You have to work harder. Yeah.
And in high school, I was like, I spread myself way too thin my senior year. I got hurt. I tried to make it up like way too quickly. So that mentality was like out the window because it's like, now I'm not doing the work I need. So by the time track season came, I just felt like I didn't have a purpose to run quick, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It
Right.
was
Because
like,
it's like,
well,
go on.
I was just like, yeah, well, like the training's not there. So like now this whole mantra I had is kind of out the window. Like, you know, I didn't work as hard as I could. I didn't run over the summer. I didn't run over the winter because I was hurt. So yeah, that whole, you know, intrinsic motivation was kind of dropped because I didn't have, you know, the source of it to begin with.
Right. And that's what's dangerous about that type of motivation, right? Because it can be fleeting. It could leave you in that one instance, or someone might be working harder than you, right? And like that's not always going to, and they potentially were. And as a high school kid, you don't know what other people are doing. You don't even know what it means to work hard, or to work too hard, or to what it means to like do well and put your all into everything.
Yeah.
But then you kept running at the next level, right? So like how did your mindset stay the same while working into a collegiate program?
So I lucked out, like won the lottery when it came to the running program I got to. So basically what happened at the end of high school is I got hurt, and the injury was in my knee, and it was so bad that at the district meet, I couldn't even finish the 3K. It was just, nope, can't do it. I walked like the last lap, and I think I got like third, which sounds like good, but not good. And then I didn't even compete the next day. So I didn't go to state, which was like a huge bummer, because it was like, you know, kids really prop up their senior years, like the year. So I ended my high school, you know, entire running career kind of just like with a dud, like, you know, just it ended. I got hurt. I wasn't successful. I did terrible in cross country that year. So I kind of just had a whole year of bad running, bad training. So I took the entire summer off. I couldn't run. I took, you know, April, May, June, July, and like the first few weeks of August, I did not run. And collegiate training starts mid-August. And so I signed with Eastern Oregon University. And when I got there, I didn't really know what to expect because I have never had a team of people who were faster. But like I said, I lucked out a ton because all the guys at Eastern at the time, like my entire team, were so much more talented than an NAIA program. So Eastern Oregon's not NCAA, they're NAIA, which most people would put in between like D3, D2.
Sometimes, I mean, the competitors at the highest level of NAIA
it's weird.
Like
the high level NAIA could be D1.
Could do well in D1 for sure.
Yeah, and they could.
The difference
usually
is
they move to it.
Right. Isn't there some sort of regulatory process that is not the same in NCAA and NAIA? What exactly is different between the
So the cool thing about the NAIA is that when it first formed, the reason it formed was because it allowed Black people to compete, which is really cool. So way back when, it's like they were like, yeah, we'll do that. So I like that I was on that side of it. But then fast forward now, both the NCAA and the NAIA do that. The difference is actually just the eligibility to compete. So the NAIA has way looser restrictions on where you were before. So if you transfer, the NAIA is way easier on you. If you're from a different country, if you had pro status in a different country before you came, your age. So like sometimes you'll be running against like 30-year-old men in the NAIA. And like they ran, competitively in like some mountain running team in Europe, and you're like, sick.
Right. And they're coming to the States for education purposes at that point, and they still want to compete at a high level.
They're coming to the States. They still want to compete. I don't know if they want to get a degree, like whatever they're doing. But they're fast. And to give you an example of like just how you can break that system, in my conference, not even like the national meet, in my conference, we had 3 guys who were sub 150 in the 800.
Right.
And they were just, like that's just how it was. And there was a guy we had in our conference for a while, sub 4 miler. I think he ran like 356 in the mile. 148, 149, 800, super quick guy. And he didn't even win a conference title until his senior year.
Right.
And he was that quick to begin with. And it's just like, it's ridiculous,
So that's winning pretty much every D2 conference absolutely every D3 conference. So like, yeah, I would kind
Yes.
of put it above at D2, probably above D2.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, because the depth between NAI and D1 it's not
Yes.
there, but the competition at the top is like really, really strong.
Yeah. So there's not a whole lot of depth, but what was funny was on my team in La Grande, Oregon, because so where I live is where the college is at, and I
Hmm.
still live here. My team just was flooded with this immense amount of talent, like very, very sturdy, blossoming runners who, probably were not NAIA caliber, but just from their backgrounds decided to all go to Eastern on different independent reasons. And so when I got there, I basically didn't know it at the time, but I just had a bunch of incredible athletes who were going to be my team. And so I just started running. I wasn't that good right off the bat, but I was really excited to get back into it because I wasn't injured anymore. And that fall, I worked my way from like 12th on the team to 4th on the team. And 100% of that success like goes to my coach and my teammates. It was like the first time I trained correctly. And yeah, they were just like super supportive. They liked running for the culture. They weren't doing it just because it was a competition. And so,
Right.
and I think that's where my mindset's at today. When we're like going back to motivation is like, I like, I like running because competing is fun now. It's like a lifestyle for me. Because I just want to see how well I can do, it's not about beating other people. I love to beat people. I hate losing, but it's not my primary motivation anymore.
And when you have that mindset of like seeing what you're capable of, like it doesn't necessarily matter if you're competing at the highest level or like in the middle or at the end, because like the ultimate goal is still there. And if you're trying and if you're competing at your highest level and pushing yourself through training and those race days, like if you win, that's a great byproduct. But if you
Mm-hmm.
get 70th, it's the same type of like you could still accomplish your goal,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So being able to have that, and that is really fortunate that your college team had that and you were able to kind of learn that through the college process. Because like in my experience, like the kids I went to school with, I would say out of like 25 kids on the team, there's probably 3 or 4 who still like run. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just people go and because they are good or they are talented and they do it as a means to an end to get a degree or just to just because it's something that they always done, but never really loved it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like when you were in school, it really kind of solidified that, like, oh, I actually love doing this.
Yeah, and I loved it not just for the sport, because everybody knows running sucks. Like at its core, training for running is very hard and
Yeah.
it
When
hurts
it's
and
over, it's the best part.
yeah, it's a huge commitment. And yeah, most people, if you ask them like, what's the best part of the race? They say the finish. That's not like, that's not a
Yeah.
good selling point.
Right.
But yeah, that was what solidified it for me was the people who like shared that interest. And so I really like you said, fell in love with running when I found people who, you know, made it more than that. Like I loved getting up in the morning to go to practice because I got to be around these people who were just excited to go and do it. Like 6 or 7 of those guys ran post collegiately, and we
Nice.
only had a team of like 15. So, they were legit, and it just like was so refreshing to be on a 15, 16 mile long run and just have these guys just like joking around, having a good time, running backwards, laughing. Like I'd never experienced that because in high school, if you said 60-mile long run, I would have had to like mentally prep for a week. I would have had to like change my diet and listen to music, get pumped up. And like, it was just like taking a nap.
Hanging out with your friends.
Yep.
Like that is when it's really great when you're just like have a bunch of good training partners and training turns into just hanging out with your friends.
It is. Yeah. That's the one thing I miss now that they've all moved and I live here alone pretty much. There's nobody like the college team still trains here, but COVID, I can't like run with them.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's solo training now.
Which makes it even that much more important that you were able to find that enjoyment in running and the parts that are more intrinsic than extrinsic, like because now you're solo, so it's not a matter of like having the team to drag you out or
Yeah.
needing to have some sort of race results to kind of pull you through. And in college, you did pretty well, right? You ended up getting All-American honors in
Hmm.
cross and in outdoor.
Twice in cross, twice in track. Like, I think I did just about as well as I could have done. I could have swapped a few years. I could have redshirted differently and maybe gotten like 2 more. But like, I don't think I was the caliber of runner to win a national title. The time that I got second when I got runner up in the steeplechase, like the dude who was in it, John Gay, he's a Canadian steeplechaser. He's an amazing runner. Like he's a different class of athlete. He's running like 8:30 steeplechases. He's, a sub 4 miler. So I never felt bad about like not winning a title, even though my wife did. The same day. It was pretty funny actually.
In the steeple?
In the steeple, yeah. She won the steeple our senior years. She actually won it like right before I went on. It was a crazy race, just because of the weather, not because of the race itself. But yeah, she always brings that back up that, I was the runner up and she was the winner. It's true.
Were you guys dating at the time?
Yeah, we've been together for a long time. We got together summer going into my sophomore year of college. So we've been together for a really long time.
Nice.
We're married now. But yeah, we same team, and her brother is actually, so my brother-in-law was one of those guys who's just like super legit runner. One of the reasons that I still enjoy running today is just like, a lot of stuff he taught me, and it's just like fun to run with him. So
that's really cool. Was there competition between the two of you, just like other than friendly? Like, was it inspiring to see her do well, and did it help her to see you do well, or was it like did that help at all in any way?
In a way, like I think for her, yeah, like my wife is super tough. One of the hardest racers I think I've ever seen. Like when she went into a meet, I don't think I've ever seen her give up as a runner, which like I always really admired that, and I wanted to be that kind of runner, because like when you see that, you're like, wow, like she'd have bad races, but it wasn't because of effort. It was like something else, injury, could be preparation, bad day. But I never saw like, I'm hurting, so I'm just going to slow down. That did not happen for her. So I didn't need to be that kind of motivator in her races. It was more of me just like kind of looking at the splits and like seeing how she's doing and like tracking that kind of stuff. So it was inspiring to see somebody be that like rock solid. And that's why she was so successful. Like she has, good genetics too, but just tough. Like her whole family's super tough people.
That's like
for me, she'd see me run and she was really hard on me because, I wasn't the same way. So she knew that I had, talent in it, but when things got hard for me, there are some races where like, to be honest, I did not put out as much as I could have. And so just like knowing that she was going to be on me every time I did that, that was a big motivator. But there was never like a competition, like, oh, I need to do better than her, she need to do better than me. If anything, it worked out so well because we lived together for so long. Like our lives were in sync. Like, oh, we both race tomorrow, we're going to eat this meal, we're going to do this. So having a training partner that you were also like in a relationship with really concreted the lifestyle of running. Because even not only was it like my training and like my own personal stuff, my own like relationship with another human was working towards the same goal of being the best runner possible.
And you see runners who are at the highest level who are married couples, and it makes sense for that from that respect, right? There's no competition between, what you're gonna do on the weekends, or there's no animosity toward like racing too often or whatever. If like you're aligned that way, it just has to make it way more simple.
Oh yeah, it's because you both, if you both really care about it the same way, it's like there's no questions on what needs to be done. You just go do it. Like, oh well, I'm going to be at a meet this weekend. So are you. We're both going to get up at the same time and go to it. So
it's like, yeah, why are we even talking about this if we know what's happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and having someone remember the dates and like times for things is nice because it's hard to like juggle all that stuff. But she's super organized, so
seems to work out well. And I want to double back about some of those things on the personal side for you in a little bit, but we're kind of on this linear path in terms of like where you are. So college went pretty well, 2-time All-American, 4-time All-American.
Yeah.
Sorry. So then what got you in OCR?
Yeah. Basically you can only run the same way for so long before it gets old. And like, thankfully for me, my last race of college, I was like, yep, that's it. I'm good. And I really thought at that time that I was done competing and running. I was like, I want to find something else. I've been competitive for 5 years and it has taken like a pretty big toll. But like, you know, a few months after that, after not running, I just felt so terrible and lazy. I was like, I got to get back into it, but I cannot train for track. Like I tried that a few times and I'd run for like 2 months and then I wouldn't run. And like, I just didn't have motivation to be good at track anymore. My love for track and field was at its peak in college. And it's, you know, it's a great sport, but it's just, you have to put in everything to be good at it. So I wanted to run and I wanted to compete, but I just didn't want to do track and field. And I was like, what else could I do? Like one of my teammates started doing trail running, but that kind of feels like the same thing in terms of like how hard you got to work for it. And it wasn't that much different. And I had kind of been eyeing Spartan races since high school. I just never did one. So like early on, like, you know, 15 years old, I was like, those look so cool. I want to try this obstacle course. Like it's a playground for adults. And then with college gone, I was like, I have no excuse to not go out and just try this. So I did it for fun. It was not to be competitive. Like I took it seriously, but I was just like, how hard can these things be? Like I look at these, you know, I look at the people on the posters and it's like, I know I'm faster than most of these people. And so I signed up for one of the US National Series races because I really didn't know the difference. And I was like, yeah, I'll just jump in one of the big ones. Let's see how bad it can be.
You knew it was going to be a big one, but like you knew it was, which one was it? Which race was it?
Seattle. The Seattle National Series. That
what
was
year?
2018 or 19?
2018.
I can't remember. 2018. Yeah.
18.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll just sign up for this one. Like I can't be that crazy. And then I got there and I realized how big the venues were, which made me extremely nervous because I thought it was going to be like this, just like pretty low key, maybe a few hundred people.
like a road race, like a turkey trot type of thing.
Exactly. Like a bigger road race, like a turkey trot. And then I saw these like hordes of people and I was like, oh man, like this is a bigger deal than I gave it credit for.
There might be a couple good athletes here.
And there were a lot of good athletes there. And it like the weather, like Seattle's my favorite venue, but the weather that day made it like my least favorite place on earth.
This was 2 years ago then, right? Not last year, or was it last year?
I'm trying to think.
Was it when I was there?
Yeah, it would have been that.
Oh yeah. It was 2019 then.
Okay, yeah. So I didn't race in 2018. So that was my first race.
That was your first race with Seattle US National Series.
Yep, Seattle US National Series was my first Spartan race. And I went in knowing nothing. Like I tried to research a little bit. I was like, okay, there's going to be like monkey bars. That's going to be a piece of cake. I failed them. I failed a lot of obstacles that day. I didn't realize how hard things are when it's wet.
Yeah. It was cold. It was cold too.
Yeah.
It was a cold day.
I didn't prepare. Like I went into that, way underprepared. I was probably doing like 30-mile weeks at most, maybe 20. I was in the gym like twice a week, not really working hard. I did nothing for my grip. I did no technical training. And I just went in thinking that like, oh, if I'm a college athlete, I'm going to be better than everybody here. Not really realize, like I didn't research the people. I don't know what I know now about it. And so, yeah, I went in and I just got my ass kicked like thoroughly.
Where'd you end up?
I think I finished 18th. But
which isn't bad in a U.S. National Series race. Okay.
But hold on, because that's not what they placed me at. I was the 18th person to cross the finish line. Apparently, 5 of my burpees were not up to code, and I didn't even know what the appeal process was at the time. Looking back, I call complete BS on that. Like I was doing full burpees. I didn't even know you could do the like fake, just get your hands above your ears, a little hop. I was doing push up, jump, squat, high as I could go. And I failed 3 obstacles. So I did 90 of those.
Yeah.
And then they added on like what? That's 2.5 minutes, 30 seconds of burpee. So I got 2.5 minutes added on to my time. And I ended up like 23rd, 4th.
Yeah. That's literally the same thing happened. I crossed the line 12th. I also did 90 burpees that day, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I ended up 17th because they hit me with burpee penalties as well. But it was so cold and awful that day. I was like, we need to get out of here because I'm not sticking around to look, I didn't even know until like the next day. I was like, I finished 17th. How the heck?
Yeah.
What did you fail? Monkey
Failed the monkey
bars.
bars. I failed the beater, which is like the worst monkey bars, the spinning ones. And then I failed the, it wasn't the spear. I hit the spear. I was really happy about hitting the spear.
Nice. Yeah.
You know, do you remember that section? It was like
Z-wall
into
spear.
Atlas, or was it spear? Yeah. So
Z-wall, spear,
spear,
Atlas
tire or something like that, or tire, like
tire,
all
Atlas,
of that right in there. I passed all those obstacles. Luckily, like all luck. And I saw some of these like better athletes.
You must have been you must have been in a good spot there. I missed Z-wall. You probably passed me on Z-wall. Yeah.
I was top 10. I was like, oh yeah, like I am good at this. And then, that was like the first mile or so. So it wasn't actually, a lot of people caught me, but so I failed the beater. I failed the multi-rig right at the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same. But by that point, everything was spent. Just like
it didn't matter.
Super cold burpees. Yeah. Whatever. But overall, I mean, not bad. Like crossing line 18th, even finished 25th in your first ever Spartan race. That's a U.S. National Series race. Now it's still early in the series. Yeah. And that was a third race. So there's still a lot of good athletes showing up to that point. I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think Woods dropped out, and I think Killian wasn't there, and maybe a couple
wasn't there.
A couple of the athletes.
There were still like Ryan Atkins, Ryan Kent.
Yeah.
VJ Jones, like people were there.
Definitely.
So yeah. And that's funny because that's actually the first time I heard about Nic Riker, was in that race. And so I saw where he was at and I was like, oh, I keep hearing this name. And like, I looked him up. I was like, oh, I think he got 7th that day. And I was like, that's a big performance. Like, way to go for that guy. And I think it like happened for me because his name was also Nick. So I was like, okay, I'm not even the best Nick. I was like, thank God my name's not Ryan, but I'm not even the best Nick. So later on down the road, I ended up finding one of our mutual friends, like a guy who lived in Illinois who went to Eastern. He was a transfer at my college. He knew Nic Riker. And after my Spartan race, we were talking about it because we were friends and he lived near me. And he was like, yeah, do you know Nic Riker? Like, I went to school with him. I was like, you know Nic Riker? Like, no way. And so he got us in touch. And so I started talking to Nick. And that was like my first time talking to somebody who knew anything about OCR, which was like huge luck, like lottery ticket for me. Because if I didn't talk to Nick at all, like it would have been way harder for me to penetrate into Spartan racing and OCR because I just didn't know anybody.
And that's kind of how it is. Like, if you don't know anyone, you're kind of trained by yourself, and then you're kind of just guessing a lot, even like training, you're still guessing a little bit, but if you're solo,
I'm guessing.
Right. Exactly. And like, especially when you're solo, it's like, okay, that didn't go well because I didn't do my monkey bars well. So do I just need to do monkey bars a lot, or
do I just do 2 hours of monkey bars a day?
Right. Or is it like, do I need to do it while I'm tired? Like, how do I get there? Like what's happening? And Nic Riker's a great one to connect with first because he's kind of a connector in his way. Like he likes to talk about people, meet new people. So that was pretty fortunate. And I
so lucky.
I didn't know that was the case. I didn't know how you and Nick knew each other. But
we both knew a guy. Yeah. Usually knew a person.
And then so later last year, you ended up winning at the Seattle Beast, right?
Yeah. So I went back to it and I was pretty nervous because of how awful my first experience of Seattle was, but I felt better about it because I was like, I think that was after West Virginia, right?
It was?
I think so. Yeah, it had to have been because Tahoe was like 2 weeks later. So I went to West Virginia, again, ass kicked. Like all the Spartan races at this point, I've just been getting beat. And in my eyes, I've been getting beat by people who shouldn't be beating me, but I just don't know enough about it. And so I went to Seattle.
Quick, what in your second Spartan race coming from the Northwest, why did you come to West Virginia? Like what made you decide to do that?
So I went to Boise. So I went
okay.
Seattle, then I went to Boise and I got 4th, the best place. And I don't want to say I should have won that race because that takes away from the people who beat you, who did, beat you, and they were better that day. But I would say now if this me currently right now went back to that Boise venue, I should have ran it so differently. It would have been minutes different. But then I did Boise and then I was scheduled for Portland and I couldn't go to Portland for personal reasons. And so I was supposed to get like 3 races before West Virginia, and Portland didn't end up happening, but I was like, I really feel like I'm good enough to go to West Virginia. And even if I'm not, I've never been to the East Coast as a like sentient adult. I went like when I was a really little kid. I've never been to West Virginia. I don't really have an excuse to go.
Right.
So my kind of philosophy with things is like, if you're on the edge of like deciding if you want to do something or not, and you really can't decide, just do it. Like if it's an experience, or if it's like going to build your character, if it's like out of your comfort zone, just do it. And so I just bought the plane ticket, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. I'm going to do it. It's going to be new for me. And it wasn't so much because I was like, I'm going to win, you know, the US national race or whatever. It was just like, I just want to do it. And it was really hard. And it was way harder than all the other ones for terrain and obstacles. There were obstacles I'd never seen. I didn't realize like how brutal it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The terrain, the East Coast terrain is pretty nasty. West Virginia too is like,
and
dicey.
the swim was so long. I didn't even know a swim was an obstacle.
The freaking swim.
So yeah, I mean, that race was terrible. Like I learned everything not to do in a Spartan race all at once. So even though I did terrible, like the lessons I took a notebook with me, and I filled like pages of all the things that I could have done better. And looking back on it, like I just didn't make those mistakes the next time I did a Spartan race. So I went to Seattle with like no expectation. And I was kind of hoping that no one would show up because Tahoe is so close, that all the really good guys would be not racing, because, you know, you don't want to race hard before the Worlds.
That's your track background speaking. That's not OCR. That's not OCR mentality. There's a race. I'm doing it. I'm doing Saturday and Sunday.
There's a race 2 weeks.
It makes sense.
No way they're going to compete.
Right.
Yeah, but no, they did want to, but it wasn't like flooded, right? So I found out Josh Fry was going to do it, and I was like, cool. I've been near him. Like I know he's solid, so he'll be fun to race. And then someone told me Aaron Newell was going to do it. I think Nick told me Aaron Newell was going to run. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so I'm not winning. Like that solidified in my head. Like I raced this guy in West Virginia, and he's really fast. So
yeah, I think he was 4th in West Virginia.
Yeah, and I really shouldn't have like done that to myself, but I mentally like checked him off as the winner. So I didn't have any expectation going into Seattle at all.
But then it turned out it was the beast distance, and you ended up beating both those guys. And Josh Fry and Aaron Newell, they're both part of the Spartan Pro team. And Aaron 2 weeks later got 4th at Tahoe. Yeah.
And so like, if you were to ask me, like, whenever I answer that question, like, what's your biggest OCR accomplishment? I hate saying that my biggest OCR accomplishment is beating Aaron Newell, because like for so many reasons, like one, that was one day. And if like it were reversed and like someone's like, oh, my biggest OCR, you know, whatever was beating Nic Maszk, I'd be pissed. It'd be like, okay, dude, like race me right now. I'd be really mad about it. And you know, it's one day. You get one snapshot of their entire OCR career. So like, yes, I beat Aaron Newell on that day, but a lot of things happened to allow me to beat him on that day. Like we were on very different training wavelengths. I was tapering off of like, you know, some running. He was ramping up for one of the biggest races of his life. And like, I hit the spear. He missed the spear. He had no idea who I was. I had him profiled.
Right.
So
exactly. He's probably, oh, this guy's going to die. Like, I don't have to worry about it.
The race. Yeah. He said like, when he saw me go out, cause the race was pretty modest at the beginning. We all kind of like, it was me, him, Josh Fry, and one other guy. And I can't remember his name. But we all just went out to pack, and it was fine. And then at one point I was like, if I want any real shot of winning this, like something occurred to me in my mind in the race, like I should try to win. What a weird, profound thought. And I was like, if I ever want to beat these guys, they have no idea who I am. If I just take off and run like a 5:20 mile, they won't go. There's no way they'll go with me. And so, you know how Seattle winds into the woods.
Yep.
When we got into the woods, I was like, that's perfect. There's so many turns. It's so blind. They'll have no idea how big of a gap I'm putting on them. And so I did just that. I like went out really hard into the woods. I made myself like 100-foot gap. And then when I got to the woods section, I ran probably the hardest, fastest 5K of the entire beast. And it was like maybe 3 miles in, but I did it there to like mile 6. so that when I came out, I'd have this just gigantic lead. And I came out of the woods and I did like some barbed wire rolls and the rolling mud. And then I looked behind me and they hadn't even come out of the woods. And I was like 800
After a full
meters
barbed
ahead.
wire. Wow.
Oh yeah. I was like, no, I was far ahead. And then I eventually, when I was about to get to the spear, I turned back and I saw Aaron Newell coming out of the brush. And I was like, I got him. Like I have these guys. It's the mistake's already been made. And I hit the spear, felt really good. I was like, there's no way if I run this correctly, I'm losing this race. Which I don't know is true now, because after I talked with Aaron afterwards, his last 5K was dirty. It was.
Oh, really? He tried.
Yeah, he
really?
was hunting me, but I just felt so relaxed because I heard on the announcers that guys are driving the golf carts next to you, and I heard over the walkie-talkies like, yeah, Newell missed the spear. I was like, oh,
I can walking.
I can come off the gas a little bit. I don't have to like cramp up or anything here. And so, yeah, I was just really comfortable. It was the first time in a Spartan race I felt like I was in control, like I was controlling the race, and I wasn't just getting like accelerated and like pulled by these like pros.
Right.
So I learned how to run my race at OCR at Seattle.
And I mean, was that your last race of the season last year?
Yeah, I did. No, it wasn't. So I was so excited about that. I was like, shoot, I should run California. And so I signed up and I started to realize why people do the Saturday and the Sunday. Like it just isn't financially feasible if you're a good athlete to not race all of the distances.
Right.
And
that's what Aaron does. That's what Aaron was doing last year. Like,
yeah,
if there was a race anywhere near him, right?
Yeah, and he won the next day. Everyone's like, "Are you running tomorrow?" And I was like, "No." And
like, absolutely not.
Should have.
Yeah, totally.
But no, I ran in Sacramento, and I knew that it was dueling with it's like a Nevada one. It starts with an L.
Oh yeah. LAU or whatever. Yeah.
I knew that Batris was running there and some other fast guys. Like, oh, maybe everyone will go to Nevada and then this will just be like a clean sweep. I can go to California for a weekend, make $1,000. And I got there, and the first race was a super, and that day I raced Chuck. I don't know why I can't think of his last name. He hasn't done Spartan in a while, but he was pretty good when he did it a few years back.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, I raced Chuck, and it's funny because he was my roommate who went with me, his college professor. So
really,
like, it's weird the connections you make in OCR. Like everybody kind of knows somebody.
Yeah.
But I raced him and I missed my spear and I lost. I got third. It put me back in a few places. So I got third, got like $100, and I was like, well, tomorrow I'll do better. And then got on the starting line Sunday for the sprint, and VJ was there, and I was like, oh, all right, well, I'll give it my best shot. And I learned how important carries were that day and how important like transitioning between obstacles was. So I got second on Sunday. So it was like moderately successful, but I love the beast distance. It feels the best for me.
And I mean, like, even looking at it in terms of like your best OCR accomplishment is like beating one person. It's not necessarily the case, because it's more of like the trajectory in which you took in the course of a season and just like learning a lot and like learning as much as you did in that short of a window. Cause that's like April to what, like August, to like September. Yeah.
Yeah. April to September. I went from like not knowing anything to being like, I want to be in the top 10 in this sport.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. So in that, of course, there are 5 months. Like, so like you just even like from someone like you who has a pedigree as a runner who comes into the sport and then decides that they want to do well in it and like actually execute on it. That's like kind of the difference between these runners who just want to come in and want to win right away. A lot of times runners come in and they'll get 25th at Seattle. If they get hit with penalties, like, oh, this is bullshit, this is stupid, I don't want to train like this. But that's not what you did. You're like, all right, I'm figuring this out and I'm going to do better. And you did do better almost on your own by yourself. Right. So like that is an accomplishment. Right. Yeah. So I said that's a great accomplishment.
Like it was on my own. But like, there's no way I could have done, like, I had a lot of help, like 100%. Like, even if it's like texting Nick Riker, or like, even at the end of the year, even though I haven't raced yet, like getting hooked up with more people and knowing like the community, getting to meet you, I have a friend named Ryan Yagi, and he helped me with weights for like 6-7 months, was just showing me kind of how to lift to get better grip. And, I had a lot of like assistant coaches.
Right.
So yeah, like motivation wise, and like I did the doing, but I did have like a lot of people taking time to like help me be successful. So I think that is important. Like people who are new to Spartan should realize that if you want to like go and be good at it, you can't just like go start running on your own, not talk to anybody and just go to these events and learn that way. You have to like network to an extent.
And that's ideally what we're doing right now, right? We're giving people
Yeah.
an insight into someone like yourself, and like, it's like, okay, how did someone get good at this so fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you're a success over 5 months in terms like I said, like you've won one race, and like there were some good people there, and you've been on the podium a couple times now, but like there's a long way to go, right?
Oh yeah, this year if it opens up, like I am super excited about 2021.
Me too, man. I'm real excited for you. What do you need to do now to get to that to get to where you want to go?
So what to do, right? Like this giant list. Before that,
what if 2021 goes, what would an outcome be that you'd be like happy with, outside of like, pushing yourself to what we talked about, pushing yourself to be like, if you push yourself as hard as you could and got the most out of yourself next season, like what do you think you would be capable of in terms of like the results?
Yeah. And it's hard for me to peg that to a tangible goal. Like, oh, I want to be top 10 at a national series race, or like, oh, I want to win this many times or podium this many times. It's not so much that is, I just want, when I'm done with 2021, for if my name gets brought up, people know that I'm a racer in OCR. Like if you're going to talk about who's showing up at a race, my goal would be that I do well enough that people are like, oh, Nic is in the race today. That is a name to look at. Like this is somebody who you should take serious if they're at the venue. I don't really care if I end up winning a race, or if I, get top 10 in the national series, if I could go to all the meets. It's just more that I want to be recognized as somebody who is a competitor. Mm-hmm. I want people to be worried, like if I'm in a race, that I have a shot of beating them, Mm-hmm. I don't like showing up to these venues. Like it's nice because you don't have a target on your head, but I don't like showing up to these venues and having nobody know who you are and having like 5 people like cut in front of me at
walk in front of you at the start line.
And it's just like, dude, you have no idea what I'm about to try and do.
They used to be my biggest gripe about like Spartan, is just this ridiculous start. And before like there was even like, now they have that gated process, right? So like you can't just sign up for elite if you want to go earlier. And that was my thing too. I was like, I hate starting like 6 rows back and needing to get around people, even though my results weren't very good. But then I started getting like pretty good results, and now I can just walk to the front.
Yeah,
it is kind of like that.
You're on the pro team, so like
I actually never had a race under the pro team. I had 1 race of the pro team. Like, yeah.
Oh, well, the headband is like the VIP pass. Like you just stroll through it. I remember the first time I saw how that worked was at Seattle, and I was trying to like just not be 20 rows back at that National Series race, and Ryan Kent walks by me, and his veins on his arms are bigger than my biceps. And I was like, oh, like there's some big dudes here. And the announcer was like, big man coming through, let him through, folks. And I was like, that's some respect. The announcer is just like parting the Red Sea for Ryan Kent.
Yeah, and he won the race 2 years ago. The year before, I think he did really well there too.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, I want that. I want people to know.
So how do you get there?
It's like equal parts training, which I'm not even worried about. The running, it's going to happen. The lifting, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. All the physical stuff that like people worry about, like, oh, I really need to work hard this year. That is like bread and butter. I'm going to do that. No problem. The big thing for me is the learning curve. So like I look at Spartan Race equal parts training physically and mentally. So I'm still like a baby when it comes to knowing how to do all the things. And I talked to Ian Darrell about this in Sacramento, and he was like, you just need to learn how to enter and exit an obstacle and to do that with all of them. And so that's a big focus for me, is not so much like the running, the lifting, the everything everybody does. It's understanding an obstacle and how to approach it, and like kind of have a higher racing IQ than other people, which I would say is something I'm really good at when it comes to just running. Like I have a pretty good racing IQ. I usually race better than my physical ability would say on paper. But in OCR, there's so many more elements and there's so much I still don't know. Like I don't have a perfected pinch crimp for the tire. I don't really have a great rolling method for any of the nets. I just got a spear, for the spear throw. So cleaning that up is how I'm going to get there. Like as hard as I work, if I don't prepare myself to learn how to do these things efficiently, I'm just going to get beat. Yeah.
And that's also a reason why, like, there's always something to be said about experience. And I found that with obstacle course racing, it kind of takes it to that next level with experience. There's just so many places to make small mistakes, where a road race or a track race, there's like, if you make a mistake, you're going to make one and it's going to screw you. But in OCR, you can make one and recover, but you could also make like 10. You could just consistently make little mistakes that other people aren't making, and that's going to add time. And that's another reason why, as much as I don't like back-to-back racing, is like why it's kind of important to do these races back-to-back and just getting out there and learning what to do in certain situations. So I agree. And I think like what you said about filling your notebook with things that you could have done differently, or like just doing that in terms of like the foresight of things, like writing things out, like what you're going to do, and then kind of have a reflection. Like that's probably as much as you can do in terms of like visualization and trying to figure that out as well. But I think you're right. Like in terms of talent and doing the work, like you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just a matter of like putting it together on those races. That's cool. What else? What do you think you could do for that to help with the race IQ?
Well, first of all, talking to everybody in TORC will be huge. So like talking to you, talking to Nick, talking to everybody on the team. Like I know you two the best, but there's plenty of people I can reach out to now who I know. Like the nice thing about being newer at the sport is I know all of you, most of you have more racing experience. So if I have a question, it's just like a text away or like a message away. And so just like talking to people, looking over film, like I know film study seems like a ball sport kind of thing, but I have watched probably every national series race through and then like used the scrub bar and just gone back and forth. Like I have studied the way Ryan Atkins goes through some obstacles over and over and over again, because I just can't figure out how he enters an obstacle with people and he leaves 20 seconds ahead. And I was like, that's amazing. There's 30 obstacles in this race. If you could be even 5 seconds more efficient in each of them, you're minutes ahead of people. And so like, that's the other thing is I watch people who are better than me. And I ask like, what are they doing? Because there's no reason. I have 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 legs. Like I can do what those people can do. There's a method. So yeah, just like studying, I think it's a lot of learning.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like figuring out what the adaptation you need to get those type of results. Like it's not going to be just the output, like your aerobic output, your anaerobic threshold, like you're already there. And like, that's where I'm at too, is like, we're already there in terms of, but like, what are the little things and how do we create those little things that will get us to that next level in terms of like, the obstacles or running through with efficiency.
And that's why I love the races opposed to like I liked OCR Stars. Like it was a fun competition, but you could not use any of that in the OCR Stars. There was no strategy going in other than just redline, like redline yourself. In the mile, it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to draft here and then I'm going to like use this section. It was like, just go as hard as you can and go. I think that's the fun part about these races is that you don't have to be, exerting yourself on every single section. You can pick the parts that you're best at and like really do well there. And then just kind of like get by on the rest of it. Cause nobody's a master of the entire course.
Right. And like, yeah, especially in those terms, like, okay, this is where I need to execute. And just making sure you do execute and making sure that you are aware of that and having that race plan. And that's what I'm really excited about that with TORC is being able to look at race maps. And like, if there's 4 or 5 of us all going to the same course or something, it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? Like how, like Nick, what do you think? Where here is where you're going to do well? Where's going to be a struggle?
That's going to be so fun. That's awesome. Like what we were talking about with how I felt when I got to college of having this like group to collaborate with. Just like, talking about a Spartan race before, because that's like my favorite thing to do the day before a competition is like talk about how you're going to execute it. I love visualization. And to have someone to verbally like communicate that with is so important. you learn the best when you're like talking about things and teaching other people and like asking the questions up front. Every time I get a course map, I just look at it and I go, okay, there's the bucket. Like,
Right.
I'd like to go a little more in depth than that.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I agree with the way I learn is like speaking things as well. It's like I need to say things out loud, and then that's kind of what maps things better in my brain, whereas opposed to just looking at it and being like, I kind of understand what's going on. And then I'm out on the course. I'm like, I don't really know what's coming up next. I really didn't do my diligence on this.
Yep.
But yeah, having a team where it's going to be advantageous is going to be really huge.
Yeah.
And on the actual like personal part, you and your wife are expecting a little one soon.
Yep, we are.
So
weeks.
How many weeks?
Well, they said any day. The due date's like New Year's, so we're expecting like the first week of January.
Would you rather in January, or like, are you worried that like the holidays are going to steal the baby's thunder in birthdays to come?
No matter what, the holiday would steal the birthday. So we're gonna level with it and just be like, when it can talk, not like the first few years, but like we're gonna tell our kid like, hey, if you want to have your birthday in the summer, we'll celebrate it then.
Nice.
In the summer, because nothing really happens like June, July, August. So like, just pick a day, we'll celebrate it that day, and then you can have Christmas on the opposite side of the calendar.
When's your birthday?
April 22nd. It's Earth Day. It's
Earth Day.
The day everybody recycles, like. They get really hyped about it for one day, and then they don't.
plant a tree. So that's a good one because like the weather's like pretty nice. My fiance is like April 29th. So like the weather's like getting better, and you're still in school as like a child. So like you get to, because in a summer kind of gets gypped on that. They never get to celebrate with their friends in school.
It steals the thunder of the birthday.
But a holiday one, that's rough on both ends.
My birthday has fallen on Easter once, though.
Oh, really?
Because Easter's a moving target. It can be like March. It can be April. I
never know what's happening with April. My birthday's on St. Patrick's Day.
Ooh.
So I thought that was always really cool until like we were old enough to drink. And then I realized nobody was hanging out because it was my birthday. Everybody's just hanging out to get turned on St. Patrick's Day.
Hey, it's Rich's birthday. Let's all do a bar crawl. And you're like, that's not really what I want to do, but okay.
Exactly. It's like, I guess I'm going. Or I'll be out and they'll be like, wait, it's your birthday, right? I'm like, yeah, it's my birthday. Like, all right, come on, come take some drinks. I'm like, okay. So, you never have to worry about getting people out, but there might not be necessarily celebrating my birthday.
That's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's all right. I like the color green. I'm super Irish, so it's fine.
Perfect.
So how do you anticipate your priorities, or in terms of training, like how is this going to shift things? Because this is your first child you guys are expecting as a family, and it's going to be the first time you're going to have to train with a child as well. So how do you foresee this changing things?
So I imagine it's going to be pretty bad, pretty tough. The hard thing for me is I have like 20 different hobbies. Like I love doing a bunch of different stuff with a bunch of different communities. And they have like varying levels of time they take up. And as of to now, I've been able to do quite a few of them. And I know that when the child's born, it's like, that is the focus. There's nothing that comes in front of that. No matter how bad I want to be, good at something like Spartan race, it's not going to take priority over my kid. But what I think it has done for me, like knowing that I'm going to be a dad soon, is that I have this like perspective shift that I'm okay with spending 80% of my time for my kid. And then with that remaining 20, just dropping everything else I have to get good at what I want to get good at. It's really helped me kind of like cleanse the side things that I used to do and really dial in on like what's important to me. And I know like now I understand what's important to me. And to me, it's, it's raising my kid, and I want to be the best I can be at this sport. So,
yeah. I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it. You can kind of you're really going to have to be laser focused on certain areas that can't be things in the periphery. When you guys found out that your wife was pregnant, did you instantly feel a shift in like priorities? I mean, I don't have a kid. I don't have a child. So I don't know. I don't know what that's going to feel like. I can only imagine like a draw or a pull away from myself. Was that something that happened instantly, or you think that when do you know if it's a boy or a girl? We're just saying your
We
child.
don't know. No, we're going in surprise.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. So when your child arrives, are you thinking that you're going to be taken off guard by how much it's going to change things, or you think you have any idea?
So I think I'm a weirdo because I have had no panic. I'm not nervous. I have no stress or anxiety about it. Like basically when we found out, I was like, all right, we got plenty of time. Like my wife's the opposite. She's like, we have done nothing. There's so much to do. And she's probably right. I'm just the kind of person I am is like, go with the flow, doesn't bug me. I rarely get stressed. So yeah, finding out that I was having a kid, I was like, all right, cool. Well, we'll make a plan and I'll just shift what I need to do to make that work. Like I'm the kind of person where it's like, okay, I'll commit to this and I'll figure out how to do it in the process of getting there. And so now that we have like the nursery built and, pretty much everything we need for when it happens, I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to get into a schedule, get into a rhythm, first 2 weeks of it, see what it's like, not sleeping, and then try to run while that's happening. Mm-hmm. And if it's really hard and impossible to do, maybe I shift how I train for a little bit. But, it's good timing because like, if we're talking training wise, races aren't even going to happen until like summer.
Right.
So I have the first 6 months, which are super draining, where there's no racing going on. I don't have to worry about leaving for any of that. So
that's true.
No, yeah. I'm not panicked at all. I'm pretty ready. I think, I'm not saying it's going to be a breeze because I know it's like exhausting. But I'm just ready for it to be exhausting.
Yeah. And I guess it's a good way to approach it. It's like just being malleable, and when things need to change, they'll change. And it seems like that you're set on that. You're not like, well, I'm definitely going to train, still going to run like, 15 hours a week. That doesn't seem, it's like, well, probably not. What are you excited about the most?
Oh man. Right now, and this probably seems like super superficial, is just I want to know what it looks like. I want to know like, oh, did it take after me or her? Is it a boy or a girl? Like I'm really excited just to know like who this person is. Later on down the road though, I'm just really excited to teach it things. Like so I'm a teacher, that's my job. And so to have like your own kid to personally do that one-on-one with feels like such a rewarding experience because it's like they can learn anything. They're like the most malleable, they're sponges. And like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, do you know the average 10-year-old asks like 1 trillion questions a day or, and it's like, great. I love talking.
I have 1 trillion answers.
Yeah, I have more than that. Like I'll have 1 trillion follow-up questions. So I'm ready to be more energetic than my kid. So that'll be fun. And I come from like a really small family, like only children had only children had only children. I've only held a baby for like 5 seconds before. So I have no experience with like having a big family and like having a baby around or having a kid. So I'm just excited. Like every new experience I have is going to be a blast.
Yeah, man. I could tell. And you seem like that to a person. It's like new experience, like great. Let's see. And I can't imagine there's anything that's going to change things as drastically as becoming a father. So that's really cool, man.
Yep. Also, when I announced this to Nick Riker, he said, "Oh man, and I thought you were going to be a good athlete."
I know.
Athlete. That's like a tiny piece of motivation that I have held on to. It's like, okay, remember that, Nick.
Yeah, because there's no telling, right? There's no telling what's going to happen, but there's plenty of people. Like we talked about, Mark Audet is on the team, and he trains like a madman, and he works full time, and he performs really well, and he has 2 little ones, and there's plenty of people on the OCR circuit. Hobie Call was winning world championships, and I think he has like a dozen children.
Really?
I think he has several. I don't know much about his family, but I know he has like 3 or 4 kids and was still like training.
2 words for you: dad strength. It's real.
That's going to happen. It's instant too.
Yes. And it immediately enters your body and you have it forever. So,
you're worried about the bucket carry, but just
not
wait.
anymore.
Just wait. Cool, Nick. Well, we'll wrap it up, but we're going to check in with you periodically. I'm excited to follow up on these things. I think your story is obviously incredibly relatable in terms of wanting to train at a high level while bringing life into this world. So I'm going to be really interested in following up on that end. And then when we start getting ready for some of the bigger races, or any of the races, we'll have you come on and talk about the prep and how you're training and how that's going. So I know you're pretty humble on social media, but do you care to share handles in terms of where people can follow you?
Sure. Yeah. I'm basically all Instagram. I think I have a Facebook floating around that is not controlled by me. So yeah. So Instagram is the best place to reach me. My handle's at Nic Maszk, and it's spelled just
like your last name, not like the face mask.
Yeah, because nobody knows how to spell my name. They'll never find me. But if they want to, it's NIC. So there's your first curveball. There's no K. And then MASZK. So snuck a Z in there.
Not making it easy. So I'll link to this for everybody so they can just click it and then have to worry about the spelling of things. Yeah. Probably much easier. Well, cool, dude. Well, I really do appreciate you popping on. I'm super excited to see what you got going on this season. I think you're going to have awesome results. And you're on Jack Bauer's 2021 list of male competitors to look out for.
Yeah, can't let him down.
Can't let Jack down.
Nope.
And he's always right. So I think he's on something with that. So now watch out for you. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on. So I'll hit stop and we'll stay on here for a sec.
All right.
We'll see you guys.
See ya.